A routine night on the highway takes a sudden turn when a white cop stops a black driver without cause. The officer's arrogance fills the air while the driver stays calm and composed. What begins as a simple stop quickly escalates into a symbolic clash of dignity versus entitlement, ending on a shocking cliffhanger. "We both know why I pulled you over. People like you never drive cars this clean." The words cut through the humid summer night like a blade, dripping with contempt. The red and blue lights pulsed in the dark, bouncing off the sleek black sedan parked on the shoulder of the deserted highway. A few cars slowed down as they passed, drivers craning their necks, curious but unwilling to interfere. The scene looked ordinary from a distance, just another traffic stop. But the tone, the energy, was anything but ordinary. Officer Rick Doyle leaned into the driver's side window, his flashlight deliberately angled into the man's eyes. His smirk carried the arrogance of someone who had done this 100 times before, certain he controlled every outcome. His hand rested casually on his holstered weapon. A silent reminder of authority. Inside the car sat a tall black man in his early 50s, dressed in a tailored navy suit that caught the light with quiet elegance. His posture was composed, his hands resting calmly on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. He didn't flinch at the insult. He didn't break eye contact. His silence alone felt like defiance. "License and registration," Doyle barked, though it sounded more like a command to submit than a procedural request. The man reached slowly toward the glove compartment, his movements deliberate. The officer's flashlight followed his every motion, suspicion woven into the beam. The registration and ID slid into Doyle's hand without a word. Doyle flipped them under the flashlight, squinting at the name. "David Cole," he muttered. "Figures. Fancy car, fancy suit. Wonder who you're trying to impress tonight." There was no answer, only the steady hum of cicadas in the grass and the distant rush of passing traffic. The silence agitated Doyle. He wanted fear. He wanted stammering apologies, excuses, visible discomfort, something to confirm the power imbalance. Instead, he got poise. The kind of poise that unsettled him. "You think you're better than me?" Doyle sneered, leaning closer, his breath heavy with coffee and disdain. "Out here, you're nothing but another suspect. And I know exactly how to deal with suspects." With a theatrical flourish, he straightened, glanced toward the back seat, and then, as if struck by sudden inspiration, pulled a small plastic bag from his pocket. White powder shimmered inside under the flashlight. "Guess what I just found?" he said, his voice dripping mock surprise. He crouched down, shoved the bag halfway under the driver's seat, and gave a satisfied nod. "Looks like you've got yourself a little problem, Mr. Cole." Gasps rose from a pair of bystanders who had pulled over a few yards back, watching from the shadows. A young couple, horrified but frozen in place, exchanged looks. They knew what they just witnessed, but fear chained their tongues. Inside the car, David Cole's expression remained unchanged. His eyes followed every move with surgical precision, like a chess player cataloging his opponent's reckless blunders. Not a single bead of sweat formed on his brow. Doyle misread the calm as resignation. "You'll be spending the night in a cell, friend," he taunted, his hand tightening around the bag as if savoring the evidence. "Hope that suit looks good in orange." Finally, Cole spoke, his voice low and steady, carrying an authority. "That didn't need to be shouted. You just made the worst mistake of your career." The words hung in the night air like a gavel strike. The officer's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, though he quickly covered it with forced bravado. "And what mistake is that?" Doyle scoffed. Cole leaned forward slightly, his eyes glinting with something unreadable. Calm, collected, unshaken. "You'll find out soon enough." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded, electric, like the stillness before a storm. Even the couple by the roadside leaned closer, sensing the shift. Something bigger was unfolding, something they couldn't yet comprehend. Doyle shoved the license back through the window with unnecessary force. "Step out of the vehicle." Cole opened the door, the motion slow, deliberate. His polished shoes hit the pavement with a controlled grace that clashed with the chaos Doyle was trying to create. Standing tall, illuminated by the patrol cars, flashing lights, Cole looked less like a man under suspicion and more like someone presiding over an invisible court. Doyle squared his shoulders, determined to reassert dominance. But the balance had already begun to tip, in ways he couldn't yet see. As the night air pressed heavy around them, Cole's phone buzzed softly in his pocket. The officer didn't notice. Cole did. His lips curved, just slightly, into a smile. That carried the weight of secrets still hidden. The cliffhanger hung sharp in the air. This was no ordinary man. Hands on the hood, now. Officer Doyle's command cracked across the highway like a whip. His hand hovered near his holstered pistol as though the well-dressed man before him were seconds from turning into a threat. The pulsing lights bathed everything in a surreal glow-red. Blue, red, blue, as though the entire scene had been swallowed by a stuttering heartbeat. David Cole didn't move right away. He simply studied Doyle with the same expression one might give a reckless child throwing a tantrum in public. Calm, but edged with a disappointment deeper than anger. Then, without hurry, he placed both palms against the hood of his sedan. His watch glinted under the strobe of police lights, subtle, but elegant, the kind worn by men who didn't just buy expensive things, but earn them. The couple standing near their own car on the shoulder shifted nervously. The woman whispered. He didn't do anything, but her partner hushed her quickly, terrified of drawing attention. They watched, powerless, as the imbalance of authority played out in front of them. Doyle moved in behind Cole, pressing the flashlight into his back as if it were a weapon. "You know what happens to liars on my highway? They learn fast who runs this stretch of road." His words were loud enough to carry to the bystanders. He wanted them to hear. He wanted an audience. Control was sweeter when it was witnessed. Cole's voice, when it came, was measured and even. "Your badge doesn't make this your road." The simplicity of the line hit Doyle harder than any insult could have. His jaw tightened, and for a moment he imagined slamming the man's head against the hood just to wipe away the composure. But something in Cole's tone made him hesitate, like stepping onto ground that looks solid but feels hollow beneath. The weight to cover his unease, Doyle pulled out his radio and barked into it. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47. Got a suspect in possession, requesting backup." His tone was full of smug confidence, as though the situation were already wrapped up. Static crackled back, followed by a curt acknowledgement. Backup was on the way. Cole straightened just enough to glance at the officer over his shoulder, his face partially illuminated by the spinning lights. "Be careful what story you write, officer. Sometimes the ending is already decided." The words unsettled Doyle more than he wanted to admit. He pushed harder, patting down Cole roughly, theatrically, searching for more evidence. His hand movements were exaggerated, designed to humiliate rather than discover. He found nothing, but he still held up the planted bag of powder with triumph, waving it like a trophy. "See this? Open and shut case. Another criminal off the streets." The couple by the roadside exchanged horrified looks. They knew the man was innocent, but the sight of a cop waving evidence carried the weight of law, even if it was rotten. The silence of their fear thickened the night. Cole didn't look at the drugs. He looked straight at Doyle as though the plastic bag didn't even exist. His eyes, calm and deliberate, cut deeper than any defense could have. "You really think this is the first time I've seen someone try to frame me?" he asked quietly. The question landed like a spark on dry grass. Doyle blinked, thrown off, his hand tightening around the bag. He wasn't expecting conversation, especially not calm conversation. Before he could respond, another set of headlights appeared in the distance. A second patrol car rolled closer, its lights joining the chaotic dance of red and blue. Backup had arrived. 2 younger officers stepped out, their postures casual, almost bored, until they saw the man standing by the sedan. Something flickered. In their expressions, recognition, hesitation, but they quickly masked it. Doyle didn't notice. Perfect timing, Doyle crowed, striding toward his colleagues with the bag held high. Caught this guy dirty. Thought he could outsmart me. Guess not. Cole remained where he was, his hand still calmly resting on the hood of his car, his face unreadable. The 2 younger officers exchanged another glance, one of them shifting. Uneasily, the tension swelled with the night air. Doyle expected applause, validation, obedience. What he didn't notice was the quiet unraveling around him, the silent cracks in the performance he thought airtight. As the younger officers stepped closer. One of them cleared his throat, his voice hesitant. Rick, you sure you want to go through with this? Doyle turned, incredulous. Of course I'm sure. This guy's dirty. Look what I found. He shoved the bag toward them like proof of victory. The officer took it reluctantly, glancing at Cole again before returning. His jaw clenched. Something unspoken passed between Cole and the younger officer, a flicker of recognition. A shift in the script. Cole's lips curved into the faintest smile, his first of the night. The storm hadn't broken yet, but the clouds were gathering. Pat. Him down again, Doyle snapped, his voice booming with false authority. This guy's hiding something. I can feel it. The 2 younger officers exchanged a glance. One of them, Officer Martinez, shifted uncomfortably but obeyed. He stepped toward David Cole, who still leaned against the hood of his sedan with the composed posture of someone who wasn't in the least afraid. Martinez's hands moved quickly but respectfully over the suit jacket and trousers. The contrast between his measured professionalism and Doyle's aggressive swagger was stark. He found nothing, of course, no weapon, no contraband. Straightening, he cleared his throat. He's clean. Doyle scoffed loudly, making sure the knight heard him. Yeah, clean because I already caught him before he could dump the rest. Don't get soft on me, Martinez. He shoved the bag of white powder into Martinez's chest. Evidence. Log it. Martinez hesitated, his fingers tightening around the bag. His eyes flicked back to Cole, and again, there was that flicker of recognition, small, almost imperceptible, but heavy enough to disturb the air between them. Cole didn't move. His gaze locked on Martinez, unwavering. The kind of gaze that said, I know you know. The silence stretched, interrupted only by the buzz of cicadas and the whir of passing cars. The couple on the shoulder shuffled nervously, the woman clutching her partner's sleeve. This isn't right, she whispered. Her partner hissed back, don't, just don't. Doyle mistook Martinez's hesitation as weakness. What's the matter? Never handled drugs before? It's evidence, plain and simple. Do your job. Martinez finally slipped the bag into an evidence pouch, his expression unreadable. But the way his jaw clenched betrayed the war inside him. Cole's voice broke the silence, low and steady. Funny thing about evidence. It has a way of telling the truth when the time is right, Doyle snapped, spinning back toward him. Shut your mouth. You don't get to talk. You're under arrest. He reached for his cuffs, but the words sounded too loud, too desperate, as though he were trying to convince not just the others, but himself. Cole straightened, finally turning to face Doyle fully. The flashing lights painted his features in alternating waves of red and blue, giving his expression a weight that felt larger than the moment. You don't get to decide that, he said quietly. The calmness in his tone rattled Doyle more than shouting ever could. It was control, the kind of control Doyle thought he owned but was watching slip away. Inch by inch, the younger officers shifted uneasily. Officer Taylor, the quieter of the two, murmured under his breath, "Rick, maybe we should wait for a supervisor." Doyle cut him off with a bark. "Don't tell me how to do my job. You two are still rookies. Watch and learn how we handle liars out here." But the bravado was thinning. His words carried more bluster than conviction. Cole looked directly at Taylor now, his voice still calm, but edged with something deeper. "Be very careful about the choices you make tonight. They'll follow you for the rest of your career." Taylor froze, his throat dry. Something in the man's tone, it wasn't a threat, but a certainty. A weight. The couple by the roadside couldn't look away. The scene no longer felt like just a traffic stop. It was turning into something else, something far larger, though. They couldn't yet name it. Doyle snapped the cuffs open with a metallic click. "Turn around," he ordered. Cole didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on Doyle, steady, calm, as though measuring him. "You're shaking," he observed. Doyle blinked. His hand was, in fact, trembling slightly around the cuffs. He tightened his grip, furious at the slip. "You think you're clever? You think you've got me figured out?" Cole's voice dropped even lower, a whisper carried by the hum of the patrol car lights. "Not figured out, exposed." The words dug under Doyle's skin like hooks. His face flushed red. He lunged forward, grabbing Cole's arm roughly, snapping one cuff around his wrist. The sound of metal against metal echoed in the night. But just as he reached for the second wrist, Cole's phone buzzed again in his pocket, louder this time, insistent. The vibration against the hood of the car made a sharp rattle. Martinez glanced at the screen just for a second and froze. His face drained of color. The name glowing on the caller ID was impossible to ignore. His eyes darted to Cole, then back to Doyle. Something enormous was about to break open, and Doyle had no idea. He was standing on the edge of a cliff. The phone buzzed again, vibrating against the polished hood of the sedan. The sound wasn't loud, but in the tense silence of the highway, it might as well have been a THUNDERCLAP. Officer Martinez's eyes locked on the screen, the glow from the caller ID reflecting in his widening pupils. For a split second, the mask of detachment slipped, replaced by something Doyle had never seen on his partner's face before: fear. "Who is it?" Doyle barked, still gripping Cole's wrist in the cuff. Martinez didn't answer right away. He swallowed, shifting his weight, his knuckles whitening around the evidence pouch. Finally, he muttered, It's the director's office." The words barely carried above the hum of the patrol cars, but Cole heard them. His lips curved ever so slightly, the first genuine expression to crack through his calm facade. "All night." Doyle laughed, sharp and mocking, mistaking Martinez's unease for nerves. "What, some big shot lawyer friend of his? Please, don't let the suit fool you. Guys like him always have someone to call. That's how they play the game." He yanked at the cuff, trying to force Cole's other wrist into place. But Cole resisted, not by pulling back, not by fighting, but by standing immovable, like a stone pillar rooted deep in the ground, unshaken. "Might want to let me answer that," Cole said softly. The confidence in his voice unsettled everyone. Even Taylor, who had been trying to fade into the background, took a half step closer, curiosity sparking in his eyes. Doyle sneered. "Answer." "What? Your drug dealer checking in?" He shoved Cole hard against the hood, trying to reassert dominance. The metal groaned under the force, but Cole didn't cry out. His silence was louder than Doyle's insults. Martinez's throat tightened. He could feel the weight of the phone still buzzing in his hand. The name on the screen burned into his mind. He couldn't pretend he hadn't seen it. Cole finally turned his head, his voice low, steady, and cutting. That call isn't for you, officer. It's for me. The words froze the air. Martinez flinched. Taylor blinked. Even the couple on the roadside leaned forward, sensing a fracture in the script. Doyle scoffed. Louder now, his arrogance swelling to cover the unease creeping at the edges of his mind. Oh, really? And who exactly are you, Mr. Fancy Suit? Some politician's assistant? A wannabe businessman? Don't try to impress me with your games. Cole's eyes, sharp and unflinching, locked onto Doyle's. You're about to find. Out. The buzzing stopped. Silence returned, heavy and charged. Then, a moment later, the phone lit up again. Same number. Same name. Martinez's voice cracked slightly as he whispered, Rick, maybe you should listen. Just let him answer it. Doyle spun on him, fury flashing across his face. What the hell has gotten into you? He's a criminal, Martinez. Don't let him get in your head. But doubt had already rooted itself in Martinez's chest. The name on that screen wasn't one you ignored. Taylor spoke up for the first time, his tone tentative. Maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe we should call a supervisor. No, Doyle snapped, cutting him off. His face was flushed red under the lights, his authority slipping like sand through his fingers. He turned back to Cole, gripping his arm tighter. You're not talking your way out of this. Not tonight. Not with me. Cole didn't resist. Didn't raise his voice. He simply leaned closer, his words a quiet knife. The more you fight this, the worse it gets for you. Something in the way he said it, the absolute certainty, sent a ripple of unease through Taylor and Martinez both. The couple by the roadside could feel the shift, too. The woman clutched her partner's arm. He's not just some guy, she whispered. You can tell. Her partner nodded slowly, eyes wide. Something's off? Something big. Doyle, blind to the unraveling threads around him, yanked the second cuff open. His hand shook as he tried to force Cole's wrist behind his back. But just as the cold steel brushed against his skin, Cole spoke again, louder this time, his voice commanding, resonant, undeniable. Officer Doyle, you're about to learn who I am. The words thundered louder than the sirens, louder than the traffic, louder than Doyle's bravado. For the first time, Doyle hesitated. The cuffs hung in the air, frozen. The storm was no longer approaching. It was here. The cuffs dangled inches from David Cole's wrist, suspended in Doyle's trembling hand. For the first time that night, the officer wasn't moving forward, he was hesitating. The flashing patrol lights painted the moment in violent strokes of red and blue, like a stage where the wrong actor had taken the lead. Cole's voice lingered in the humid air. You're about to learn who I am. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was absolute. Martinez shifted uncomfortably, glancing between Cole and Doyle. His pulse hammered in his throat, but the name still burned in his mind. The director's office. He'd seen it clear as day on that screen. His training screamed at him to act, to stop Doyle before this spun completely out of control, but fear rooted him in place. Taylor, younger and more naive, finally stepped forward, his voice thin but determined. Rick, maybe we should slow this down. There's something off here. Doyle snapped his head toward him, his face crimson under the lights. Something off? The only thing off is you rookies doubting me. This guy's a liar. He's trying to scare us with big talk. But Doyle's words carried less weight than before. The edge was dulling. Even his own voice betrayed cracks, quivering at the edges like a rope fraying under strain. Cole, still leaning calmly against the hood, tilted his head slightly. Do you really think your word is going to stand against mine? The question wasn't rhetorical. It was surgical. It pierced Doyle's confidence, carving into the facade he wore like armor. Doyle barked a laugh that sounded more like a cough. Against yours? You're nothing but a... He cut himself off, the slur dying in his throat. Even in his arrogance, some small part of him realized he might be stepping into something too deep. The silence that followed was heavier than any insult could have been. From the roadside, the couple watched with bated breath. The woman whispered, "That man isn't scared at all. Look at him. He's in control." Her partner nodded slowly, "And the cop knows it. You can see it in his face." Doyle tightened his grip on the cuffs, trying to recover his slipping dominance. "Enough games. Hands behind your back now." Cole finally turned his head, his eyes locking onto Doyle's with a calm ferocity that stopped him mid-motion. "Do you have any idea what's waiting for you if you go through with this?" The question hit like a stone dropped into deep water, rippling outward. Martinez swallowed hard, Taylor shifted uneasily, and even Doyle faltered. Empty threats. Doyle spat, but his voice lacked conviction. He sounded less like a man in control and more like a man talking himself into believing he was. Cole's phone buzzed again. This time, the sound was louder, longer. The name flashed across the screen once more. Martinez couldn't take it anymore. He stepped forward, his voice urgent. "Rick, stop. I saw the name. I think he's telling the truth." Doyle spun, eyes wild. "You saw nothing. You hear me? Nothing. Don't let him play you." He grabbed Martinez by the shoulder, shoving him back. "I've been doing this for 15 years. I know exactly how to handle liars." But even as he spoke, his hand shook around the cuffs. Cole exhaled slowly, his composure unbroken. "It's not me you're fighting against. It's the truth. And the truth doesn't bend for you." The words slid into the silence like a blade. Taylor looked between them, his face pale. "Rick, I think we need to shut up," Doyle roared, his voice echoing across the highway. The sound startled the couple, who flinched and stepped closer together. His scream felt desperate, a man screaming into a void he couldn't control anymore. Cole straightened, his shoulders squaring as though the night itself bent around him. For a moment, it didn't look like Doyle had his suspect pinned. It looked like Doyle was the one trapped. The younger officers could feel it too. The balance was shifting, not in shouts or violence, but in silence. In the calm presence of a man who didn't need to raise his voice to command. Then, headlights appeared in the distance. A black SUV rolled closer, its tinted windows reflecting the flashing lights of the patrol cars. It pulled onto the shoulder with slow precision, as if it already owned the space it was about to enter. The atmosphere changed instantly. Martinez's stomach dropped. Taylor's breath caught. Even the couple knew this wasn't just another passerby. Doyle, too consumed with his battle for dominance, didn't notice right away. But when the SUV door opened and two men in dark suits stepped out, the blood drained from his face. Cole's lips curved into the faintest smile. The storm was no longer approaching. It had arrived. The SUV door shut with a solid, deliberate thud. The kind of sound that carried weight, a sound that made everyone listening realize this wasn't an ordinary arrival. Two men stepped out tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark suits that reflected the patrol lights and sharp flashes. Their movements were crisp, professional, synchronized. No hesitation, no wasted motion. The highway felt smaller the moment they appeared. Even the cicadas seemed to fall quiet, as if the night itself was holding its breath. Officer Doyle's chest tightened. He tried to puff himself taller, squaring his shoulders, but his voice betrayed him. "Who the hell are you?" Neither man answered immediately. Instead, one of them scanned the scene with a slow, piercing gaze, taking in the flashing lights, the handcuffs, the plastic bag in Martinez's hand. His jaw tightened. The other man walked straight toward Cole, ignoring Doyle completely. He stopped just short of the sedan, his face softening for the first time. "Sir," he said respectfully, his voice low but steady, "we've been trying to reach you." Martinez froze, his breath catching. Taylor's eyes widened. The couple by the roadside stared, whispering frantic guesses to one another, but it was Doyle who felt the ground shift beneath him. "Sir," he repeated, his laugh harsh, brittle. "Don't play games. He's a suspect. I caught him dirty." He pointed to the bag like it was a golden ticket. Evidence. The man in the suit didn't even look at Doyle. His eyes stayed on Cole. Waiting for a response, Cole finally moved, straightening from the hood of the car with slow, deliberate grace. The cuff still dangled from one wrist, gleaming under the red and blue lights. His calm expression hadn't changed, but now it was layered with something else authority revealed, no longer veiled. "Stand down," Cole said softly, his words directed not at Doyle but at the men in suits. Immediately, they nodded, stepping back slightly, though their presence alone remained heavy enough to shift the atmosphere. "What the hell is going on here?" Doyle demanded, his voice cracking at the edges. He turned to Martinez, desperate for validation. "Tell them what we found." "Tell them," but Martinez couldn't bring himself to speak. His hand shook as he held the evidence pouch, his conscience clawing at him. The weight of what he'd seen, the planting, the lie sat like a stone in his chest. Taylor whispered, almost to himself, "Oh my God." Doyle rounded on him. "What?" Taylor's eyes flicked to Cole, then back to Doyle. His voice trembled, but he forced the words out. He's not a suspect. He's someone else." Doyle's face flushed with rage. "Don't you start with me too? He's nothing. You hear me? Nothing." But even as he shouted, his words rang hollow. Cole finally spoke, his voice measured, each syllable deliberate. "You keep insisting on nothing. And yet, somehow, men like those," he gestured slightly toward the suited agents, "show up when I stop answering my phone." Doyle's mouth went dry. He glanced at the SUV again, at the men who stood silently but radiated authority, and for the first time, he faltered. The couple on the roadside could feel it too, the air thick with revelation. The woman whispered, "He's important." "Really? Important?" Her partner nodded slowly. "And that cop has no idea what he's just done." Doyle's pride fought desperately against the truth clawing its way into the open. He shoved the cuff harder against Cole's wrist. "I don't care who you are. You broke the law." Cole's gaze locked onto him, sharp and steady. "No, Officer Doyle, you did." The words detonated between them. Martinez flinched. Taylor's jaw dropped. Even the agents shifted slightly, their expressions darkening. Doyle's grip faltered. For the first time that night, his hand shook not from anger, but from fear. Cole raised his wrist slowly, letting the dangling cuff catch the light. "You think these mean control?" His voice was calm, resonant. "They mean nothing when you put them on the wrong man." Silence blanketed the highway. No one dared to breathe. Then, from the SUV, another figure emerged. Older, authoritative, his suit pressed sharp as steel. His presence eclipsed even the agents. He strode forward with the certainty of someone used to commanding entire rooms. Martinez whispered under his breath, "Oh no." Doyle's stomach sank. His bravado cracked out. The figure stopped just a few feet away, his eyes locking on Doyle with a stare that could shatter stone. The storm had officially broken. The older man's shoes crunched against the asphalt as he approached. His stride was measured, his expression carved from stone, and with every step, Doyle felt smaller. He didn't need to raise his voice. His very presence silenced the night. "Agent Cole," he said firmly, the title sharp enough to slice through the air. "We've been trying to reach you." Your silence has half the Bureau worried. Gasps rippled across the roadside like a wave. Taylor froze. "Agent?" His voice cracked. Disbelief wrapped around every syllable. Martinez blinked hard, trying to process what he'd just heard. The couple by the shoulder clutched each other, their eyes wide, as if they were watching a movie unravel before them. But Doyle's face drained of color. His lips parted, but nothing came out. For the first time, words failed him. Cole, still leaning calmly against the hood with the cuff dangling from his wrist, gave a small, controlled nod. "I told you," he murmured. "You cuffed the wrong man." The older man turned to Doyle, his gaze cutting like a blade. "Officer, do you have any idea who you just put your hands on?" Doyle's voice stumbled. I was following protocol. Drugs, car, evidence." His excuses tangled into incoherence. Cole's eyes finally lifted, pinning Doyle with quiet precision. "You didn't find drugs, you planted them." The silence that followed was heavier than any shouting match. Martinez's throat tightened. He wanted to speak up, to confess, but fear welded his lips shut. The bureau director, because that's what he had to be, slowly turned toward Martinez. His stare lingered long enough to make the young officer's knees weaken. "You, what's your name?" "Martinez, sir," he whispered. "Tell me," the director said, his tone calm but commanding, "what you saw tonight." Martinez's heart pounded. He could feel Doyle's glare burning into him, threatening, warning. But the truth weighed heavier than his fear. He swallowed hard. I saw him drop the bag," Martinez admitted, his voice cracking. I didn't want to believe it, but I saw it." Taylor let out a shaky breath. "I knew it. I knew something was off." Doyle's face twisted in fury. "You little traitor. Enough." The director's voice boomed, echoing off the empty highway. "Not another word. From you." Doyle flinched like he'd been struck. Cole finally pushed off the hood, his calmness unwavering. He lifted the cuff still locked to his wrist and extended it toward Martinez. "Take this off," he said gently. Martinez scrambled to obey, the key slipping in his trembling hands. The cuff snapped open with a metallic click, and for the first time, Cole's hand was free. He rubbed his wrist once, then straightened. Fully. The transformation was instant. He no longer looked like a quiet man unjustly accused. He looked like what he truly was. A leader, a director, someone whose very posture commanded respect. Doyle's chest heaved. This is a setup. You can't what?" Cole's voice cut clean through the night, calm but devastating. "Can't reveal that. You abuse the badge? Can't expose the way you twist the law to suit your prejudice?" The older director stepped closer to Doyle, his eyes narrowing. "Do you know the name Michael Cole?" Doyle blinked rapidly, his panic rising. The director's voice hardened. "Director Michael Cole, head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation." The words landed like thunder. Taylor's jaw dropped. The couple on the roadside gasped audibly. Martinez's knees nearly gave out, but Doyle staggered back, his entire world imploding in an instant. His arrogance, his certainty, his smirk, all of it drained away, leaving only raw fear. Cole didn't move closer. He didn't need to. His authority filled the space without effort. "You put me in cuffs," he said softly. "You planted drugs on the man who oversees the agents that investigate corruption like yours." The silence stretched, unbearable, until the director broke it with one final command. "Martinez, Taylor, secure this officer." Doyle froze. "No, wait, you can't, but—" Martinez, though trembling, stepped forward. Taylor followed, his face pale but resolute. The power balance had shifted beyond recovery, and Doyle was standing on the wrong side of history. Cole's eyes never left. Doyle, calm, unflinching, unstoppable. The unveiling was complete. Doyle's lips trembled as Martinez and Taylor closed in, their hands hesitant but firm on his arms. For the first time all night, Doyle wasn't the one giving orders. He was the one restrained. "This is insane," he sputtered, his voice rising like a drowning man's cry. "You can't arrest me. I'm the officer here. I'm the law." Cole's eyes didn't waver. He stood tall, silent, his presence heavier than the flashing lights and roaring engines around them. The bureau director, the older man who had arrived from the SUV, folded his arms, his gaze cutting through Doyle like glass. "You were the law, Officer Doyle, until you chose to disgrace it." The words landed hard. Martinez shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't let go. Taylor tightened his grip, his jaw clenched, his loyalty no longer to Doyle but to justice. The couple on the roadside watched wide-eyed. The woman whispered, "I can't believe this." He thought he could plant evidence on him. Her partner shook his head slowly. He thought the badge made him untouchable. But look at him now. Doyle thrashed once, but the struggle was weak. His confidence had bled out the moment Cole's name was spoken aloud. This is a misunderstanding." He was resisting. "I had cause. I did everything by the book." "By the book?" Cole's voice finally cut through, smooth but sharp. "Show me the page where the book says to fabricate evidence. Show me the chapter where it tells you to degrade a man because of the color of his skin." Doyle had no answer. His mouth opened, then shut, the silence louder than any denial. The director stepped closer, his tone measured. "Do you know what happens to an officer who tries to frame the head of the FBI?" Doyle swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Like a trapped animal. I didn't know who he was." "That's your defense?" The director asked, his voice dripping with disbelief. "You didn't know he was powerful? Not that he was innocent, not that he was undeserving, only that you didn't know who you were humiliating." The night fell even quieter. The cicadas had stopped their chorus, leaving only the hum of idling engines and the pounding of Doyle's panicked breath. Martinez's voice was barely above a whisper. "Sir, what do we do with him?" Cole stepped forward, his eyes locked on Doyle. "You treat him the way he treated me, by the book. But this time the real book." Martinez nodded, his resolve solidifying. Taylor glanced at Doyle, then back at Cole. "You want us to book him?" Cole didn't blink. "Yes, for corruption, abuse of power, and attempted entrapment of a federal officer." The words hung in the air like a sentence already passed. Doyle shook his head violently. No, you can't. I'll lose everything. My job, my pension, my whole life." Cole's expression softened only slightly. "You should have thought of that before you decided someone else's life was worth destroying." The couple's eyes glistened as they watched, their silence heavy with unspoken applause. Martinez's hands tightened on Doyle's wrists, fitting him with the same cold metal cuffs Doyle had once snapped onto Cole. The irony cut sharp. Doyle's voice cracked, desperation oozing from every syllable. "You don't understand. I've been on this force for 20 years. I deserve respect." Cole's gaze didn't flinch. "Respect isn't earned by years, Doyle. It's earned by integrity. And you sold yours cheap." The director gestured to the agents from the SUV. They stepped forward, their polished shoes clicking against the pavement, ready to take custody. Doyle twisted, panic bubbling in his throat. Please, Director Cole. I made a mistake." Cole looked at him for a long, silent moment. Then he said quietly, "A mistake is forgetting a procedure. What you did tonight was a choice." The words hit harder than any shove or strike could. Doyle's knees buckled slightly, the fight draining from him. Martinez and Taylor exchanged a glance. They had seen arrogance before, but never arrogance crumbling so fast, stripped bare in front of the very system it once hid behind. The couple on the roadside watched as Doyle was escorted toward the waiting SUV. The woman whispered, "It's like watching a king stripped of his crown." Her partner nodded. No like watching a thief dragged out of his own castle. Doyle's voice carried one last desperate plea, echoing into the night. You can't do this to me. I'm the badge. I am the law. Cole's reply was calm, final, and devastating. No, Doyle, the law doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the people you swore to protect. And tonight you failed them. The cuffs clinked, the SUV door opened, and the cracks in Doyle's badge spread into shattering pieces. The black SUV door slammed shut, its echo lingering in the humid night air. Doyle sat inside, wrists bound, his once steady breathing replaced by frantic gulps of air. For the first time in years, the badge could not shield him. Outside, the scene remained frozen in an almost reverent silence. Martinez and Taylor stood a few paces from Cole, their faces pale, their bodies taut with adrenaline. They had just arrested one of their own, and the weight of it pressed heavily on their shoulders. The director turned to them, his voice measured. Your choice tonight defines your future. Remember that. The badge can be a weapon or a promise. Martinez lowered his gaze, shame burning in his chest. Taylor, though still trembling, nodded firmly. We chose right this time, sir. Cole's eyes softened slightly, just enough to show acknowledgement. Then he turned toward the couple who had stayed rooted to the spot. Their eyes widened as Cole's gaze met theirs, as if they had been seen, validated, pulled into the orbit of something much larger than themselves. Thank you, Cole said simply. The woman clutched her partner's hand. No. Thank you, she whispered, emotion thick in her throat, for showing us that even the powerful can be humble. Cole gave a small nod, his calm presence wrapping the moment in dignity. Inside the SUV, Doyle's fists clenched against the cuffs. He could still hear them outside, the murmur of respect, the words that painted him as a villain. His jaw tightened. This isn't justice, he hissed under his breath. This is betrayal. The agent sitting beside him in the SUV turned. His head, voice flat. Justice feels like betrayal to those who abuse it. Doyle's face twisted. I gave 20 years to this job. I put away criminals. I kept these streets safe. The agent didn't flinch. You put away who you wanted. And you kept the streets safe for yourself. There's a difference. Doyle turned to the window, his reflection staring back at him under the harsh glow of red and blue lights. For the first time, he saw not a man in uniform, but a man stripped bare. A man exposed. Outside, Cole stood silently. His hands were free now, but his composure had never been broken. The weight of his title, his years of service, his very identity, filled the night with a quiet authority that no uniform could replicate. The director stepped closer to him. Michael, he said, his tone quieter now, you could press charges yourself. Make this personal. Cole shook his head slowly. It's not personal. It's systemic. If one badge falls, others learn. That's the only way the system survives. His words carried not just to the director, but to Martinez, Taylor, the couple, the agents, and even Doyle in the SUV who strained to hear through the glass. Martinez spoke up, his voice shaking. Sir, I'm sorry. I should have stopped him sooner. I froze. Cole turned his eyes on him. You didn't freeze. You watched. And when it mattered, you spoke the truth. That's the beginning of change. Martinez swallowed, relief, and guilt battling inside him. Taylor stepped forward. What happens to him now? Cole's eyes flicked to the SUV. What happens to any man who abuses the trust given to him? He'll stand before the law he claimed to serve. Inside the vehicle, Doyle pressed his forehead against the cool glass, his breath fogging the window. He wanted to scream, to claw his way out, but the truth weighed too heavy. He saw the faces outside, not fearful of him, not submissive, but steady, resolute, free. For years he had used fear as his weapon. Tonight it had abandoned him. The director's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked to Cole. Washington is already calling. Word's out. They want to hear directly from you. Cole nodded once. They will, but not tonight. The director frowned. Then when? When he's booked. When the system shows it's bigger than one man's corruption. That's when I'll speak. The agents nodded, their respect clear in the way they straightened their shoulders. The woman by the roadside whispered to her partner, "He's not just powerful, he's principled." Her partner's voice was hushed with awe. That's what real power looks like. The night stretched long, but the reckoning had already begun. Doyle sat in silence, the cuffs biting his wrists, every sound outside hammering his downfall into permanence. For once, the law didn't bend around him. It bent toward justice. The courthouse loomed tall against the morning sky, its marble steps gleaming under the first light of dawn. Cameras lined the barricades, reporters shouting questions, their microphones stretched like arrows toward the black SUV pulling up to the curb. The door opened, and Doyle emerged in cuffs. His face was pale, his jaw clenched, the swagger gone. The cameras flashed mercilessly, each burst of light capturing his humiliation for the world to see. "Officer Doyle," a reporter shouted, "do you deny the charges of corruption?" Another voice cut through. "Did you really try to frame the FBI director?" Doyle's lips tightened, but no words came. The silence was louder than any denial. Behind him, agents escorted him up the steps. Martinez and Taylor followed, their faces pale but resolved. They were witnesses now, not accomplices. The couple from the roadside had been called to there. Courage carrying them from that lonely highway into the heart of justice. And then, from the other side of the SUV, Michael Cole stepped out. No longer cuffed, no longer silent. He wore a dark suit, his posture straight, his presence unshakable. The crowd shifted immediately, the chaos of reporters faltering into a hush. Every camera turned. Every voice stilled. Cole didn't raise his hands, didn't wave, didn't smile. He simply walked up the steps with quiet dignity, his shadow stretching long against the courthouse facade. At the entrance, a reporter finally found his voice. "Director Cole, what do you have to say about what happened last night?" Cole paused, turning his head slightly. The morning air carried his words across the square. "What happened last night wasn't about me," he said, his voice calm but powerful. "It was about what happens when arrogance hides behind a badge, when hatred dresses itself as authority, when power forgets its purpose." Flashes erupted. Pens scribbled furiously. Cole continued, his gaze steady. "The law is not a weapon for the few, it is a shield for the many. And those who twist it for their own prejudice will face the same justice they tried to deny others." The crowd stirred, the words striking deeper than any headline could. Inside the courthouse, Doyle was led to a holding cell. He sat on the hard bench, staring at the gray wall, the weight of his 20 years collapsing into nothing. His badge had been stripped, his gun confiscated. His name already poisoned in the press. He muttered under his breath, a broken mantra. "I am the law, I am the law." But the words rang hollow. He was no longer the law. He was the cautionary tale. In the courtroom, Cole sat quietly in the front row. He wasn't there as a victim. He wasn't there for vengeance. He was there as a reminder that dignity doesn't shout, it endures. The judge entered. The gavel struck, and proceedings began. The prosecutor laid out the charges: evidence tampering, corruption, attempted entrapment, civil rights violations. The list stretched long, each charge another nail in the coffin of Doyle's arrogance. Martinez testified first, his voice trembling but clear. He admitted what he had seen, what Doyle had done. Taylor followed, his account steady, his eyes no longer clouded with fear. The couple spoke too, their words painting the picture of arrogance collapsing under the weight of truth. Finally, the judge turned to Cole. "Director Cole, do you wish to make a statement?" Cole rose slowly, his presence filling the room. He looked not at the judge, not at the jury, but at Doyle. "You put me in cuffs," Cole said quietly, "but those cuffs didn't hold me. They held you. Every link in that chain was forged by your own arrogance, your own hatred, your own corruption. You weren't binding me, you were binding yourself." The courtroom was silent, the words sinking deep into every ear, every heart. Cole's voice softened, almost like a benediction. "Respect is not demanded with force, it is earned with honor." And tonight, the law reminded us all of that truth. He sat back down, his calmness unbroken. The judge nodded once, then struck the gavel. "This court finds Officer Doyle remanded, without bail pending trial." Gasps rippled, but Doyle's face had already collapsed into defeat. His world was gone. Outside, the sun rose higher, its light spilling across the courthouse steps. Reporters scrambled to craft their stories. Citizens whispered about justice, and somewhere deep inside, a nation felt a little heavier and a little lighter at once. Michael Cole walked out through the crowd. No celebration, no triumph, just quiet dignity. His words echoed in every mind that had heard them. The law is not a weapon for the few, it is a shield for the many. And with that, the story was sealed.